Hi, everybody. Welcome to the State of Startups. Thank you all for joining us. I know that people will continue streaming in. I'm told right after lunch that there tends to be a stream, which makes sense, coming in now. So a little background about myself. So I am the Chief Marketing Officer of Google Cloud, but I think of myself first and foremost as an entrepreneur. When I first came out to Silicon Valley in the late 90s, I know that probably seems very old to some of you, I was at Intuit where I had the opportunity to start the Quicken Loans business there. So wrote that original business plan and helped launch that business. Then I went over as a co-founder of a Kleiner Perkins-backed company in kind of dot-com era that we scaled and sold very quickly, akin to that time. Then I had an opportunity to go work for Harvard Business School for a while, running their California Research Center, where I was writing and teaching about entrepreneurship and marketing and all kinds of different areas at that time. And then from there, I went over into venture capital myself. So I was at Emergence Capital, a B2B enterprise cloud firm, as their first operating partner, where I worked with our portfolio companies on their go-to-market strategies. And from there, transitioned to Google Cloud in 2016, when it actually, the cloud division felt like a startup in and of itself. At the time, we were less than, it's going to sound huge to all of you, but at $1 to $2 billion of revenue run rate. But in terms of where we are now at a $36 billion run rate, it has in many ways felt like the world's biggest startup as we've grown and scaled the business. But working with startups is core to what we're all about at Google Cloud and really Google more broadly, and really want to invest in this community. And this became a much bigger part of Cloud Next for us this year as well, with hopefully you're finding on the show floor more opportunities, more programming. And that's why we have great sessions like this one, where you have an opportunity to hear from other founders who are doing really interesting work with AI, with building their companies, scaling, working with Google, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to learn from them. So in a moment, I'm going to welcome them on stage with me and also let you know that we're going to open this up to Q&A at the end. So please have your questions ready, because we'll make sure that we do have time to take some for all of you. And so with that, I'm going to click the slide so you can see who is joining me on stage. I think that this is right. Yes, well, you met me. But I would first like to welcome Rodrigo to join us from Meistrari. Here, come on up on here. Yes. And now here. Timur from VEED. Yes. Anjan from, HealthifyMe. I keep thinking of it as Healthify, but come on up. And Shyam from Articul8. Great, thank you all. So thank you all for being here with us today, and also being customers of Google Cloud and partners with us. So just to give you, everybody in the room, a sense of who you are and what you do, I thought it might be easiest to just start with giving you a chance to introduce yourselves in your own words. Cool. So why don't we start with Rodrigo?
Thank you. So thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you. My name is Rodrigo. My last name is, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. So you can call me Bob. It's the beginning of the last name. That's how people call me. So we're building, at Meistrari, we're building Tela.com. It's an IDE for natural language. So basically we have a workspace where you can configure everything that you need when you're building an LLM-based application. So you can create very easily, configure your inference with adding prompts, variables, structuring outputs in JSON formats on any given model. You can use all available models there. You can then test your application. We have a test suite that you can easily run against any configuration you make in your system. We have a version control system. And there's an evaluation system for you to automatically evaluate live completions. And you receive a feedback on if they went good or bad, or what's the likelihood that they're good. So you can control what you do with live inferences. So for a bad inference, you could redirect it to your customer support, or just not send it to production, send it to an alternative flow. So that's basically what we're building.
And relatively new, if I remember.
It's relatively new. So we've just started onboarding our first enterprise clients now. So they are law firms where they have lawyers configuring their systems, banks that need to work with a lot of operational things. Hi there, Stark Bank. Lots of things lots of different clients. We also have startups building AI applications who need a more accurate control system. So it ranges a lot.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for joining us. Timur, tell us a little bit about yourself and about VEED.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tim. I'm a co-founder and CTO of VEED, which is a cloud-based video editing platform our big ambition, our big goal is to pretty much allow anyone to create beautiful, stunning, professional-looking videos with very little to no effort. And we've built an editor that allows you to pretty much do whatever you want. If you want to read from a script, that's fine. We'll lock your eyes onto the camera automatically. There are many other tools as well that we've created that help you just get your video editing and video making super easy and comfortable.
Great. Well, thank you. I know that many of us in Google Cloud have been playing with it, so that's great.
Amazing.
Anjan, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Hi, I'm Anjan, Chief Business Officer of HealthifyMe. For those of you who don't know, HealthifyMe is like the super app in India and Southeast Asia for health and wellness. We do a bunch of things. We do nutrition tracking, much like MyFitnessPal in this part of the world. We have probably the largest coaching team in the world in the sense we have dietitians and fitness trainers on the platform. That's been in business for the last 10 years. And for the last 5 years, we've been AI first. We built the first AI weight loss plan in 2019. It's called Healthify Smart. And today, more than 500,000 users have used it, bought it, renewed, etc. So yeah, scale's been great. I've been in tech for the last 14 years and last 7 years in Healthify. Yep, and we're expanding to the US very soon, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, you just told us you're moving here, so moving to the Bay Area, not Vegas.
Fingers crossed. and plus my second name, guys, if anyone wants to pronounce it, you'll get a free bottle of water.
You will notice that I did not actually attempt to pronounce any of your last names. That's on me. But, go ahead, Shyam.
Thanks, Alison. First of all, thanks for having us here, and happy to share the stage here with these amazing panelists. And so I'm Shyam. I'm part of the founding team at Articul8 AI, and we are basically a generative AI, full-stack generative AI enterprise software company. And we are also relatively new as an independent company. And about 3 months old now, we spun out of Intel, but we were in deep stealth mode at Intel for about 2 years. And we've been building this for a while, and most of the founding team, immediate founding team came from Intel, but prior to that, we also were working on AI and high-performance computing at AWS. That's where we all met. And the problem we are trying to solve for our customers is we've seen a lot of experimentation with Gen AI and large language models and so on. We actually don't believe a large language model is the solution. We believe it's a means to an end. There's 80% of things that need to go around the model that'll essentially help enterprises deploy and scale up production-scale Gen AI applications. And all of those other pieces is what we put together. And what we help do is accelerate the journey from experimentation to full-scale production in a very short time period.
That's great. Well, thank you. As you can tell, a range of different applications and use cases, and also a range of different regions. So when we put together this panel, we thought it would be interesting to recognize some of the regional differences of what it means to be starting a company or scaling a company right now. And so maybe we could start with, I know you're based in the US, but share a little bit about what you're seeing in the environment, the startup environment right here in the US, and then we'll have a minute to touch on what it's like in India, what it's like to touch on Europe, and also in Brazil.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting time that we are in for startups. In general, from what I've seen, it's been a challenge in the last 12 months or so for most startups. But that is not true for AI and Gen AI startups. According to what I read, there's $20 billion being invested in the last 12 months in AI startups in the US.
So hopefully you all and everyone in this room is seeing some of that.
Exactly. Over 400 startups, I believe, have been funded in the US in the AI space. So it's an interesting time. But I would say the challenges we've seen apply probably to every startup. It's how do you manage resources? And those resources can be people. How do you find the right talent? It can be essentially monetary resources. How do you deploy them efficiently? And it can be a whole host of other things. But I would say in particular, when it comes to AI and Gen AI, one of the challenges is how do you get compute? We're going to talk about that later.
Yeah.
But there are a ton of well-funded startups out there. But how do you get access to this massive amount of compute that we need to build our products? if you're not named Anthropic or OpenAI or others like that. And that's one of the major challenges we're dealing with. And I'll leave it at that for now. Yeah. But in general, it's a good time to be a startup in the US in the AI space. But with that also comes another challenge. How do you differentiate yourself? A lot of the messaging seems to be very similar. How do you stand out from the crowd? And what we have at least attempted to do at Articul8 is to focus primarily on solving the most difficult problems out there, which are core to changing the businesses in aerospace, when it comes to financial services, oil and gas, manufacturing problems. Those are the ones we're trying to solve. And we're a more mature team, as you can see from my gray hair. But so we've also been very focused on go-to-market and revenue right from the beginning. Startups are always going to have challenges. You're always going to have more work than people. And how do you manage that? And so we've been focused on revenue right from the beginning. And luckily, we have a very large customer base, even though it's an independent company, 3 months old. And it's growing rapidly. And happy to say our revenue is also growing. Revenue solves all problems, right? So for startups, I would say that's the biggest advice. Focus on customers, focus on revenues, and growing your customer base.
Yeah, no, that's great. Can you give just everyone a sense of the size of the scale of your business and whatever metrics you're comfortable sharing, just so?
In terms of, you mean
either people, whatever way you feel, because I know some of it's confidential, but either people,
or
revenues, or funding.
We haven't publicly announced a lot of that.
Oh, nothing. Okay, well,
purpose.
there you go. They're just growing fast.
But we are a few dozen people, I would say.
Okay.
Few dozen.
And we are distributed across, we are headquartered in the Bay Area, Santa Clara, but we are distributed across many cities in the US. We have a team in Brazil, we have a team in India, and we have go-to-market partners. Some of them are publicly announced. Intel's actually one of them as well. BCG is another one. That's actually another great way to grow. As a startup, you have not that much resources. Partnerships are a fantastic way to grow, and partners like Google and others as well.
That's great. Well, thank you for giving some context in what you're seeing in the environment.
Yeah.
So, Rodrigo, Brazil, probably very different, and also I know also very early stage. So maybe share a little, what are you seeing in Latin America right now, or at least in Brazil specifically?
Cool. So in our journey, we actually started building for the US. We thought this was a very big market. But there are significant differences. So I think one thing we see more applications in Brazil are people are very pragmatic and they want to solve a specific problem. In the US, in comparison, we see a bigger focus on companies trying to create a new capability by creating something that wasn't there. So it's more likely that you find a company trying to find a new web browser or a new solution for very complex things in the US. And in Brazil, we see very tactical applications. So I actually think practical solutions end up scaling really fast and people have a lot of usage because you're not trying to find a new use case, right? So you just have a problem, a specific problem you want solved, and you're applying AI as a tool for that. So I think there's this, at least in my perspective, a bit of this difference in mindset. So that would be something of note. Yeah.
And how about the funding environment? You raising capital from VCs in Brazil, US?
So our story was a bit different. So we made a proof of concept project on what we believed was the best way for you to iterate on your prompting and on your inference system. We made it like over a weekend. It was a very small proof of concept. And on the next day, we received a message from Toby Lutke, the founder of Shopify, on GitHub. And I was like, what? And he was asking for us to add a security feature, window IO, just a way to manage your API key. And we added it, and then we started receiving lots of stars from the Sidekick team, which is the team building their AI agent. And that's when we started trending on GitHub. We started receiving messages from lots of American VCs. And so we chose a partner in Brazil and a partner in the US. So we ended up raising with two VCs. We're super happy with the funds we've chosen. So if anyone wants to talk about it, I'm glad to say a word on it. And yeah, I think we could choose from the different places, but I think it's been very worth it to have people in different landscapes. And our biggest client is actually in Brazil. So we have these big corporations that we can sell, and it's been very helpful to have people there to help us introduce. So the average time it takes us to, so far, we've been starting to sell like a month ago, but the average time it took on our contracts of million per year, like kind of ballpark, it has been 2 weeks. So having good introductions to people who have actual problems, like the founders and the CEOs of companies, has been very helpful, because then it really streamlines the process of having the organization try out your product, do a big pilot, and really see the value in it to create a
I would say that most people here, if they could get million contracts in 2 weeks, they'd be pretty happy with
that. Yeah, we were super happy with it. So it's very recent.
People may mob you after and asking.
Happy to talk to anyone who's interested.
Tim, maybe tell us a little bit about what it's like in Europe and what you're seeing there, especially because there's very different data rules there as well.
Would love to. I think what I find really interesting about IMEA region is that I think we have one really strong superpower. And I think that's basically, we have very broad, available, very affordable talent market. And I think if you go to, say, US or let's say San Francisco, and you try to hire an engineer there, maybe a web developer, you'll spend maybe 200, 300,000, and that's fine. But
he's warning you, Anjan.
Yeah. I know.
You set up shop.
But in Europe, you can get a small team for that. And I think when we didn't really have a very competitive venture capital scene in Europe, maybe 10, 15 years ago, that allowed a lot of startups to bootstrap, to get really competitive. And I think now also with a lot of, I guess, like a rise of entrepreneurship, maybe in Europe, we have maybe over $350 billion companies. I find that just crazy, just because when I was just getting into startups, being a unicorn was just a unique thing. Now it feels very normal, and now it's even in Europe as well. And I think this sort of tailwind kind of made a lot of European companies very attractive, maybe on the global scene. And we're now seeing maybe for the first time how maybe a lot of European companies are attracting talent from actually loads of different regions. Maybe we see a lot of talent going from US to European companies, and from across the world as well. And I think just kind of going even further, venture capital kind of followed along as well. Our investors, Sequoia Capital, they opened an office in London with a focus on Europe a few years ago. And I think we're seeing a lot more VCs just coming into Europe and looking at this space. But like, I'm going to be honest, it's not all rosy. There are problems. And I think one of them is, I think UK and maybe France in particular, I feel like those places have really been hammered by the recent funding squeeze. So unless you are an AI startup and growing like an AI startup, it's probably very tough to get funding. But let's be honest, maybe most of us are doing AI here, so it's probably okay. And I think kind of going back to talent stuff, hiring AI engineers, research engineers, it's tough. By the way, we are hiring, so if you want to talk to us, we'd love to tell you all about what we do. We're a beautifully exciting video company, so yeah.
And in terms of scale, any way that you can share in terms of your funding or size, anything that you've publicly disclosed?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a SaaS business. We've recently reached a huge milestone. We are now making over 30 million ARR in annual recurring revenue, 200 employees, I think, some of the stats. Yeah,
that's great. Thanks. It's great to see here the fast scale, built with Google Cloud. Awesome. And Anjan, maybe tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in India and why it's been interesting to move now beyond India.
Yeah, a lot of what Shyam said actually resonated with me. I think it's also the gray hair that's causing this. But yeah, a lot about profitability and revenue focus. I think what's happened in India is by 2022, we had over 100 unicorns created, and that was third in the world back then, after the US and China. But you see very few of them going public in India. I think the markets are such that they demand profitability, which is the right thing, very honestly. And that gap has kind of come down a little bit. Say about 40 of these startups are supposed to go public in the next, say, 2 years or so. Now the journey for a lot of us, including HealthifyMe, because we've been around for a while, we've had, as I said, about 40 million users in India, and we're traveling to, other parts of the world, the developed countries. In this journey, I think AI has played a very big role for us. So a little story is, we started as a calorie counter in India. We did that for 2 years. Then we started coaching services on top of it, because people who came in for calorie counting wanted to lose weight. It made sense to get nutritionists and fitness trainers on the platform. We grew that from 2014 to 2019, 5 million users or so, and we were Series B funded by then. The most important thing is the amount of data that we had over that period of time. Lots of nutrition logs from across the world, not just in India. Lots of messages exchanged between the coaches and the clients. So we were sitting on a lot of data that was both structured and unstructured. In 2019, when we started focusing on profitability, one of the biggest things that came up was, hey, not everyone outside of the big cities in India could afford, say, a $100 plan for a 6-month period, because you're paying your coaches, right? You have really well-educated dietitians and fitness trainers. We don't hire unless they have, I don't know, a master's degree or whatever it is. So we had to bring the cost down. So we used this data to create, back then we had just LSTM models, and we didn't have much. We didn't have all the cool Gen AI stuff that we have right now. So we put together a bunch of things to create the first, as I said, the first affordable weight loss plan. We brought down the price to $10 for 6 months. And our conversions doubled. And of course, there's a lot of margin because it's all just AI, there's no human coaching. So the more the revenue came in, the more profitable we became. So the last 5 years has been a wonderful journey that way. Half our paying consumers buy just the AI plan and not coaching. So in a developing country, if we just step back and look at whether people will trust just an AI plan, well, the answer is yes. We just had to try it. So it's been a great journey. I think we are on the journey to become profitable. The same story of the other 40 startups that are slated to go public in the next 2 years, and we hope you're there. So yeah,
that's great. No, it's really fantastic to hear each of your distinct and different stories and how you're all growing and scaling, and how Gen AI has really been a catalyst for all that growth. So I'm going to ask each of you one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to questions from those in the room. But Rodrigo, you've talked about how quickly you've been building now with Gen AI, and would love to hear some of the best practices that you're learning real time right now, and really how is Google Cloud and our technology helping you along the way?
Awesome. So I think the main thesis we had when we built our product, and the thing I think really helps people build applications, is be able to iterate really fast. So when we first thought about it, we had a first principles thought of LLMs are just systems that predict the continuation of a given input, right? And how is that useful? How is that relevant? If I told you that a long while ago, you might not care about this description, but that's what it is in essence. And the thing where you can create value is when you can do something automatically, or something that you wanted done that you couldn't do in an automatic way. So finding the structure and finding the product takes a lot of time, both if you're trying to find the product that people want, so finding product market fit, or if you're just trying to perfect a solution. And so I think being able to iterate really fast on your system, on your inference, and deploying things really fast is a good learning that has helped people reach solutions that are actually marketable or useful. And that's actually the reason why we built our system the way we did. So we believe it's the design that we could find that most streamlines the getting there. And with Google Cloud, we have all of the data from every process because our solution is end-to-end. So we have all of the data saved. And if you want to fine-tune something, if you want to use Gemini, if you want to use any of the solutions that you're going to need with the data that you have, for example, fine-tuning for your specific use case, everything is going to be there, and you can easily do it with Google Cloud's offerings.
That's awesome. Hopefully some of the announcements that we've made throughout this conference are going to help and
yes,
you get
definitely.
some of the access to some of the new areas, which is great.
Thank you.
Shaim, would love to hear from your perspective. What are you learning right now? What are some of the things that you can share? You have a lot of experience as an entrepreneur, working at bigger companies, doing entrepreneurship, it seems like within big companies, and now spinning out. What do you think others can learn here from some of that experiences and anything? I'm assuming most of the people here are technical leaders and can learn from you.
Yeah, I can actually go back to what I briefly mentioned before in terms of compute and how do you manage your cloud resources.
Yeah.
Things can get very expensive in that space very quickly. But especially in the Gen AI space, right? We're talking about large language models. We're talking about fine-tuned models. And we also believe domain-specific models are really going to be the way of the future, mainly because all these large language models, as we know, are basically being trained on similar data sets publicly available in the cloud. What we've heard is 90 to 95% of the data in the world sits behind firewalls. This is dark data. So if companies really want to differentiate themselves from their competitors, they need to leverage that data for themselves. And that's also a moat that nobody else can get access to. So that's going to be the differentiator. And if you're doing that, then companies like us, startups, do need to get access to compute to build those models. Customers need access as well to build their own models. And it comes really back down to what resources are available. And compute, I would say, is one of the key resources. So it's data and compute. And how do you bring those together at scale? That is a huge challenge. And that's the problem we were trying to solve as a team when we were all at AWS. And that's the problem we're trying to solve today for our customers as well, in terms of how do you manage that. And the interesting thing is we don't need compute all the time. So is there any way to actually get access to these compute resources at scale for short periods of time? That's something we're really struggling with because VC money is the most expensive money you can spend. And we want to manage that carefully and not commit to like very large commitments, long-term commitments. So that's a fine balancing act that we're trying to figure out even now. I don't think we've completely figured that out. But the way to get there is what I was mentioning before, is through partnerships. And partnerships, for example, with Google, with the SI partners out there, even with our venture partners, who have been extremely helpful from a go-to-market standpoint, but also getting us access to these types of resources. So I would say as a startup, you're always going to be constrained in resources. You're never going to have enough time. There's always going to be too much work. Leverage all the resources around you and all of your, build your own board of directors, if you will, for your own self, but also for your company. And I think that's the way to scale up and be successful long term.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's interesting to hear how effectively you've been working with the partner ecosystem. I imagine that comes from years of experience and having built so many relationships that you're now harvesting in a sense and then using to accelerate growth, which is great. So
absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. Anjan, for you, you've actually grown through multiple chapters now over time, and really this Gen AI chapter is effectively the next chapter. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing now, and again, how the technology and Google Cloud and others can help you at this next phase, and some of the use cases that you're seeing where Gen AI has been most helpful.
Yep, I think the right way to kind of complete that story of becoming more profitable is two ways. One is what Shah mentioned, that is good partnerships, because it comes with essentially zero marketing cost, and that's why it works. But there are certain use cases that we have seen over our many years in this business, that have helped us grow on the B2C front. So one of the things, so I'm going to take up 2 examples to explain that. So the first one is this nutrition tracking. So I'm guessing a lot of you would have tried to, I don't know, lose weight or get fitter at some point in time. You would have used an app that's kind of counting calories for you, or your micro and macronutrients. The hardest part of doing that is not really being mindful. It's actually the act of opening the app and typing in what you ate. And typically you would eat, I don't know, somewhere between 2 to 3 foods in every meal, like bread and pasta, for example, right? It takes a while to get those things right. So in 2019, we tried to go down this path of doing this from a photograph, both detecting the foods on your plate as well as the quantity of the foods. We were probably well ahead of the curve, got it wrong many times. When we call it snap, by the way, and when you snap a photograph, we had, I don't know, an accuracy of about 50%. So people used to churn, went back to the normal modes of logging your meals. But over the last, I think, 8 months, that particular space has really taken off. As Tim said, this whole space of just image video processing using AI has been phenomenal, at least in our field. So that accuracy that was languishing at around 50-60% is now at 85%. We still send 10% of those images to human ops to understand how to benchmark on a real-time basis, because in India it's actually possible to do that, and surprisingly AI beats humans today in that particular field. We've been working with Gemini Ultra quite a bit on getting the models right. We've been working with a lot of other partners. So it's been very interesting. That field is just growing very quickly. I think a lot of big players coming in trying to solve the same problem. The second one is closer to my heart, at least because of the fact that a lot of us need an accountability partner. You would expect your coach to be there for you all the time. It's not possible. Say, I don't know, your fitness trainer needs to be around you all the time. That just doesn't happen. So even online, even though we have, I don't know, 700 coaches across the world, we have over 200,000 users at any point in time being serviced. It is not possible for your coach to be with you all the time on WhatsApp, on our app, wherever it is, right? You want real-time guidance. So that's when we created Ria. Ria is our AI nutritionist. Again, we created it in 2019 with LSTM models, but didn't scale as well. Today, obviously, we have a lot more context. We also have fine-tuned models that kind of understand things just about you. So almost like we create an instance of Ria for each user, right? It's been, so that plus the Snap, the entire technology behind it, both of them have shown 50% improvement in retention. And by retention, what does it mean? For businesses like ours, you retain a user, they're going to renew, and that renewal is a lot more profitable than your first revenue. And on the cost side, imagine if 60% of your messages went to AI and not to humans. That actually happened to us. 60% of the messages that come into Healthify, we get about 3.5 million messages in a month, and a very large part of 60% of that goes to AI. So again, extreme profitability, extreme engagement, both sides of the story are covered. So it's been wonderful. That journey has been eye-opening for us.
Yeah, it's phenomenal because you had so much customer insight going into this, so that you knew probably so quickly what those use cases would be for Gen AI, that you had a head start versus like being a brand new startup of like, okay, I'm going to use Gen AI to create a new health app.
Absolutely. So, I think the last point I want to add is the fact that we used to build just for India, and now with everything that we've done, we've been testing in the US. Those of you who have not tried it, you should try Snap in the US, and it actually works really well. It works in any part of the country, in any part of the world really well. So it's kind of helped us transcend boundaries, geographical boundaries. So it's been fun.
That's great. I can imagine. It sounds fun. Tim, last question for you in terms of you've are kind of now in that kind of mid-stage scaling period of your business. What are you learning in terms of how do you continue to keep growing at the pace that you're growing, and any advice for the founders and others in the room here?
Of course. I think I'll probably start with a very sober thought. So maybe let's forget about generative AI, maybe NFTs, AR, VR, all of that stuff. I think I'd always say, I mean, what is your business? What does your customer want? I mean, it always starts there. If your business naturally fits with a narrative of AI, then of course, that's amazing. That's a no-brainer. For example, for us, video is a really interesting medium because it kind of can absorb a lot of AI tech advances pretty easily. So, for example, text AI, we can use that because people love captions, they love subtitles, but also we can use image AI, video modification AI, pretty much anything you can think of. So there is probably no point fitting or trying to fit a square peg into a round hole if it doesn't work. But I would always, of course, advise people to talk to other founders, see what's out there, be adaptable, be agile. Like this conference, for example, has been so amazing for us. We really excited to work and kind of explore Google Model Garden, for example. We're packaging and kind of distribution business in many cases because there are so many different AI tools coming out. We can't possibly build all of them. So we have to sometimes work with third parties. And I think for us, it's also just a lot of work to contact individual AI companies and try to get to work with them. And having something like Model Garden, for example, just is great. But I think the point is that I found out about this yesterday, and so it's pretty cool. And I advise you just to keep ear to the ground, talk to other founders.
Wait, you found out about Model Garden yesterday?
No, about new features.
Oh, I was like, I'm really doing a bad job as a marketer. But no, I agree. I mean,
isn't like the APIs and how you can like flip between different providers that were actually not there before. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's actually also the learning for us. These kinds of conferences are great because you learn all these things, but the more that we can build into the console, into the product and everything to be able to highlight what you might also be interested in, we can do a better job of that because we're building so quickly as well.